Before we start today's show and we go through my 6 big-time takeaways from yesterday's win over Rutgers, I want to ask you guys this question. There's a reason I'm asking this question, but what is your favorite game from the 90s? If you're old enough to remember the games from the 90s, you know, this will be an easy question for you, I'm sure, or you'll narrow it down to 1 or 2. But if you're a young whippersnapper, you can only remember the games your daddy told you about, then just kind of, come with whatever comes to the top of your mind. It is the Michigan Football Report. We're going to talk Cade McNamara. We're going to talk a new offensive coordinator for the Michigan Wolverines and some more coming up on the show right now. So 95, 96, 97, Michigan 3 straight years beat an undefeated Ohio State team. The last game of the year, 3 straight years. 97 propelled an undefeated season for Michigan, but none of those 3 games were my favorite. I actually go to the 1997 Michigan-Penn State game when Michigan was number 4 in the country, went into number 1 Penn State, 2 8-0 teams, and Michigan absolutely obliterated them. At one point, I believe they're up 38-0 in the game, jumped from number 4 to number 1, and the rest was history. Won the last 3 games of the year, Charles Woodson Heisman Trophy. So that's my favorite game from the 90s. Make sure you guys go down and answer and debate me if you think that game is not as big as I remember it to be. But a lot of things happened last night, and I kind of went off the cuff in my post-game show late last night. If you haven't watched it yet, I'll put it in the comments. It'll be in the description. But here are my 6 takeaways from the game yesterday. Number 1, it's already starting. And you guys just need to quit it because I told you back in August, September, I said, leave Joe Milton alone. Stop with the hype. Just because sloppy, sleepy Sam says he's the next Joe Milton because he's 6'5" with short dreadlocks, the next Cam Newton, it's not true. Now all the blog boys are already jumping on, well, he's the next Cade McNamara is the next Joe Burrow. He's the next Drew Henson, all this stuff. Guys, the guy has not even started a game at quarterback for the University of Michigan. And you guys, some of you, are already calling him the truth, the savior, going to save Harbaugh's job, all this crazy stuff. He's played 2.5 quarters of football for this team this year, really, as a kind of the starting role, taking over for Joe Milton. Now, the numbers look good, I'll admit that. And he looked great passing the ball, 27 of 36, 260, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, another touchdown through the ground. And how about this little nugget? He's the first Michigan quarterback since Denard in the 2011 Ohio State game to account for 5 touchdowns with no turnovers. Now, there haven't been many 5-touchdown games, running and passing or just passing combined by a Michigan player in Michigan football history, so it's a very small sample size. But given that it's been 9 years since that's happened, I think it's a pretty good kind of debut, although he wasn't even your starting quarterback yesterday. Also of one interesting piece of note, Joe Milton, 4 touchdown passes on the year, 5 games started. Cade McNamara, 5 touchdown passes on the year, 0 games started. That's a kind of an interesting little nugget, little note to think about. But I want to ask this question before we go on to the show. Who do you have the least confidence in on this coaching staff right now? If it's Jim Harbaugh, type JH. If it's Josh Gattis, type JG. If it's Don Brown, which, that defense is something else, go out and type DB. I'm going to make this the pinned comment on the video. You might get hit with a YouTube ad break. Scroll down, answer the question, scroll back up. Ad should be over by then. My number 2 overreaction on today's show is Jim Harbaugh. And it looked to me, and I'm pretty astute when it comes to these things, that Jim Harbaugh took over the play calling in the 4th quarter and definitely into overtime. The one most notable drive that I saw, and I put this out there, I have watched every snap of football Jim Harbaugh has coached in probably the last decade, and certainly every snap Josh Gattis has coached at Michigan. And there was no Josh Gattis speed and space or anything that he's done when it's been clear he's been the offensive coordinator calling the play calls. And I don't know if that's been every game over the last 2 years. That was a Jim Harbaugh 2016, Jim Harbaugh 2015, and a little bit of the old Stanford sprinkling. There was a lot of power running game. There was a lot of trap movements. There was a lot of pin and pull with the offensive line. Wide receivers doing different things that aren't necessarily the speed and space that I think is kind of a fake thing at this point because we just haven't seen it. But I think Jim Harbaugh took over the play calling definitely on that last drive when Michigan scored a touchdown to go up 8 points. Thought that was the ball game, although Don Brown had other things to say about it. But I don't know if that sells well for the future of Josh Gattis in Ann Arbor if you don't trust him when you're on the road at Rutgers, of all places. So I'll ask you this question. Will Josh Gattis be the offensive coordinator for Michigan next season in 2021? I think the answer is no. So I'll tell you that up front. before I ask you guys to go ahead and answer. Let's just hear what you think, though. Type Y for yes, he will. Type N for no. Go down in the comments and just let me know if you're a yes or no, why you think he will or won't be the offensive coordinator next year. We'll see what you guys think on the future of Josh Gattis. Next up, number 3 of 6 takeaways we've got coming at you on today's show. Talent identification issues. And I am smacking my head. I'm shaking my head. SMH, I don't care which one you use, but it is absurd that this Michigan coaching staff continues to misidentify the talented players that they have. I'm going to say this. I'm not going to act like I'm a football coach by any means, but it only took me 3 passes from Cade McNamara, his first 3 against Wisconsin, to know he was clearly a better quarterback than Joe Milton. At least a better, more confident quarterback, at least one who threw him a more catchable ball. And then I saw him what he did in the middle of the second quarter on yesterday. And I'm like, how can a football coach whose job is to literally do 2 things, identify talent, come up with a game plan to win? How can Michigan's coaches not be able to do this first one nearly ever, right? And you say, oh, James, well, Joe Milton looked great in practice, all this other stuff. Well, if you think back just 2 months ago, Cade McNamara was widely considered to be the number 3 on the depth chart at quarterback. Not the number 2, he was the number 3. It took Dale McCaffrey to transfer for him to get the number 2 job. Let's think about this. Hassan Haskins finally got it going in the running back position, like 20-something carries, 100-some yards, touchdown. He was a linebacker 2 years ago. And he didn't even get any attempts, rushing. He didn't get in the game at all until Zach Charbonnet got hurt last year. Another talent identification. How about Cam McGrone? He was the best player in Michigan's defense last year, but they didn't play him at all until Josh Ross got hurt against Wisconsin. It doesn't end there. How about Jalen Mayfield? Was good enough to go pro after his redshirt freshman year, but not good enough to play a single game, really. I mean, he got a couple snaps. As a true freshman in 2018, they redshirted him. Kekoa Crawford, go check his stats from yesterday at Cal. Not good enough to play for Michigan. Good enough to drop like 175 yards receiving, 10 catches in the Pac-12. It continues. 2 starters, or at least I'm not sure if they both started for sure, but putting up big numbers in there almost every snap I saw. Michael Dwumfor wasn't good enough to play D tackle for Michigan last year. Good enough to start for Rutgers. Got a couple tackles. Drew Singleton, not good enough to make the 2 deep in Michigan. Starting at Rutgers, gets 5 tackles, fumble recovery for Rutgers yesterday, and on and on. So I think this coaching staff, it starts with Jim Harbaugh, and right behind him is Matt Dudek, who I think has done a really poor job at recruiting. They're not identifying the talented players on this roster, and they're letting him go elsewhere and star or sit the bench when they're clearly the best player in the case of one Cade McNamara. Thank you guys, though, so much for continuing to support the channel, continuing to subscribe. I got a new nickname for the show, Michigan Football Report. My nickname for you, MFR, Michigan Football Report. You guys are my MFers. So you MFers need to keep subscribing to the channel. If you're an MFer, you're watching, you haven't subscribed yet, we're at 10,336, doubled our subscriber count from middle of the summer when I was on here playing video games because there's nothing else to talk about because the season was about to be canceled, which it was. Luckily, thanks to us, we got it back. But if you're an MFer, go subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. To those that you have, thank you so much. Certainly always appreciate it. Next one. Don Brown, you gots to go, brother, because I started writing my post-game show. I was making a little thumbnail for the video and all this different stuff after Michigan went up 8 points, and you blew it. And not only did you blow it, you put really poor players out there for the 2-point conversion. Let's talk about that 2-point conversion and maybe whether or not guys are playing for their coaches or not. The quarterback dropped back. He saw a little gap in there, and he plowed through 4 Michigan players from about the 3.5-yard line to get in the end zone for the 2-point conversion to send basically the game to overtime. So if my guys are letting a 190-pound quarterback plow through 4 of us, I just kind of feel there's no grit, no determination, no wanting to play for the coach. So with the fact that Don Brown, that Jim Harbaugh had given up, I think it was 35 total points in 5 years against Rutgers, and he gave up 42 last night, just shows where Don Brown's defense has gone. It has gone off a cliff. I don't think he's got it anymore. And if he does have it, but it's just the players who aren't cutting it, then he is not identifying the players and the positions that Michigan needs to make sure they have a championship-level defense. And I'll say this. If Michigan wants to beat Penn State, Maryland, and keep within 30 against Ohio State, I think they're just going to have to say, hey, we're going to give up 35 to 40 points these next couple games. Offense better score 45 if we're going to win these next 2, and about 90 if you want to beat Ohio State. 3 weeks from now. We told you about BetUS all season long, our official sports book partner. Just got the line in my ear. What? Michigan's favored? Get the hell out of here. Michigan's favored 4 points against Penn State this weekend. It's a noon game. 55 points is the over-under. 55.5 is the over-under. I bet on sports every weekend. I put my picks on Twitter on Saturdays and Sundays when I do make bets. So if you follow me, you've seen those picks. Wasn't a really good day yesterday. We're not talking about that one. But chatsports.com/GoBlue gets you to the sign-up page to make your first deposit. 125% deposit bonus. What does that mean? Put in $100, you get an extra $125, $200, an extra $250, and on from there. Best deposit bonus in the game. Have some fun this holiday season. Get going with BetUS. Put some money down on football games. Number 5, and my 5 of 6 takeaways. Can Michigan win these next 2 games? It doesn't look too daunting, although everyone, myself included, was like, they're going to be lucky to win 1 game from here on out after last week, and they won that 1 game, and maybe that's the only one they do, but Penn State is now 0-5 for the first time in program history. And a little stat I put out on Twitter I saw on ESPN late last night, there's only 2 programs in all of college football that have never started 0-5 in the history of their programs. That's Michigan and Ohio State, oddly enough. But this Penn State game, it's, in my opinion, it's the same as Rutgers. It's the same as Michigan State. They're so bad, if you lose to them, what the hell does that say about you? So if you lose to Penn State, oh boy, it's going to be more of the same of just venom and pitchforks coming down to Schembechler Hall. And Maryland, they've looked good. They beat Minnesota. They've had a game, I think 2 games off now, whatever it is. So if you lose to Maryland, I don't care who Maryland has on their team. Michigan just can't lose to Maryland. You dropped like 55 on them something last year. Every year Jim Harbaugh's been there, it's been a blowout against Maryland. Yeah, can't lose to Maryland. I feel a little more confident that Cade McNamara with him at the quarterback and all that Jim Harbaugh, maybe Josh Gash, will come up with some sort of offensive game plan to win that game. But I want to ask you guys, predict Michigan's record over these next 3 games, the ones that are on the schedule. There'll be a 9th game, the championship week, against the cross-division opponent at the same level. But there's 3 games left on the schedule that we know they're going to play. Penn State, Maryland, Ohio State. Predict the record. It's going to either be 0-3, 1-2, 2-1, or 3-0 if you're crazy. So let me know what you guys are thinking. I'm caught between 1-2 and 2-1. I think they'll win 1 of Penn State, Maryland. They'll lose to Ohio State. But they have to actually surprise me to win both those games because they've been so inconsistent. I just can't believe they're going to win 3 straight games, Rutgers, and then these 2 games coming up. My last takeaway is that Michigan's playing Penn State this week. And never in college football history, I don't think, have 2 top 20 teams played Thanksgiving weekend with less, 2 top 20 preseason teams, 1 top 10, 1 like number 17, 18 in Michigan, have come into a game on Thanksgiving weekend with less wins, 2 combined, and less fanfare that this Michigan and Penn State game will have on Saturday. It's the noon game on ABC. Michigan's favored. They have absolutely annihilated Penn State at home the last 2 times they've come to the Big House, and maybe the 3. I can't remember what happened in 2014. I actually think they did win that one, but in Jim Harbaugh's era, 2016, I think they won 49-10, and 2018 it was like something like 42-10. So Michigan has owned Penn State at home. We'll see what happens coming up. This certainly isn't the same Don Brown defense. It's not the same Michigan team that we've seen in 16 and 18. 2 teams that went into the final weekend against Ohio State, ranked in the top 4 with a shot at the college football playoff. This is a 2-3 Michigan team against an 0-5 Penn State team. If you don't watch the game, you're not going to hear any, I'm not going to blame you whatsoever, but we'll be here to talk about it all week and into the weekend with our post-game show. If you didn't stay up late night last night and you want to see my post-game reaction Michigan football report, I've got that for you right here. And I told you earlier, if you're an MFer, make sure to subscribe to the channel by clicking this button right here. We'll be back tomorrow with more Michigan football news and rumors. Till then, go Blue.